How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're on Daf Yud Beis, Daf 12 of Masechta Shevuos. Today's good Daf, I think. Yeah? What do you guys think? Good Daf? Good Daf. Okay, we're going to start on Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Say a little bit more than halfway through the Amud. The truth is, I had recorded Daf Yud Aleph on Friday, which means that at that time I had basically gotten to as far as I had gotten. If I would have gone a little bit further, I think I would have done just a few more lines on Friday, but not a big deal. Okay, here we go. Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis, a little bit more than halfway through the Amud. Omar Mar, we said earlier, Mesa Tifdeh. If you remember the Pare Adume. So what are we talking about? We're talking about Lev Bezdin Masne, right? Because we're talking about what happens at the end of the year when you have Korban Tamids, right? Because you have the Lishkas Atloim, and you have these sheep that are healthy, that are there, ready to be sacrificed, and comes the end of the year, and you're no longer going to, it comes Nisan, now all subsequent, sacrifices going forward are to be purchased with the shkalim of the new year. These sheep in the Lishkas Atzlaim were purchased with shkalim from the previous year. So what do you do with them? So we had said yesterday you could be po to them. How can you be po to them? I thought they were kadosh with kedusha saguf, right? So how can you just be po to them? So we said, leiv bezdin masne, that when they already when they purchased them, it was with the understanding that they were going to be used. In the event that they're not going to be used, then they can then at that point it would just be kedushas domim, and you could transfer their kedusha onto money, and that money will be used for whatever they do with leftover shekels from previous years. And so that's the kind of leiv bezdin masna, that bezdin lechatchila kind of has in mind that the kedusha is only so long as it's actually going to be used, and we applied that similar concept to a pare adume. That by pare aduma as well, if you makdish a pare aduma to be the pare aduma, but then you find that you found a better one, so you could use the better one instead. And the initial one, you could be poda because lev bezdin masne, because it's a high ticket item, and certainly they're going to have in mind what happens if we find the better one. Well, if we find the better one, we'll just be poda the initial one. Now, we had said, now we had said, if the paraduma dies, so now you have a dead paraduma, and it's also bano, it's hektish, it's also bano, but you could be poda it to make it mutter bana. The thing is, what are you going to do with a dead heifer? A dead red heifer. What are you going to do with a dead red heifer? So, what are you going to do with it? You're going to be poda it. Okay, so now it's no longer hektish. Can't eat it. It's nevela. We're going to feed it to dogs. We're going to be poda hektish so we can feed it to dogs. For its hides, for its leather. And what bezdin lev bezdin masne. Bezdin specifically has in mind that if this red heifer becomes a dead heifer, so then we'll be able to be podet so that we can benefit from its hide. That's really what they're thinking about. Rav Kahana says, why not? They say there's a saying that from a camel, even its ear is valuable. Okay. I guess the point is there's a chair there. Okay, this is going to be a little noisy. Wait, what? Okay. There you go. yeah, the hide could be used to make all sorts of hidey kinds of things, and that's good hidey things. I have some coffee here. I'm gonna drink a little coffee. Okay, that wraps it up for the red heifer stuff. Here we go. Now, Eisvei, we have a kasha on Rabbah. Rabbah is the one who proposed this concept of Lev Bezdin Masne. Rabbah is the one who proposed this concept of Lev Bezdin Masne. And we have a kasha on this concept of Lev Bezdin Masne. Amrulai L'Reb Shimon, Mashe Karvu Zeboze. So they asked Reb Shimon, if you remember in our Mishnah, so Reb Shimon had said that Saranaisa Bachutz is for Ein Ba'idiyah Batchila, V'yesh Ba'idiyah Basof. Sir Regalim are for Ein Ba'idiyah Lo Batchila V'lo Basof. Sir Rosh Chodashim are for Tar Shachal Satami. So Kilu, each korban has its own, it comes for its own thing, right? The Saranaisa Bachutz is for, as I just said, Ein Ba'idiyah Batchila V'yesh Ba'idiyah Basof. Sir Regalim Ein Ba'idiyah Lo Batchila Basof. Sir Rosh Chodashim Tar Shachal Satami. Each one is coming for its own thing. So they said to Reb Shimon, are they interchangeable since they're coming for different scenarios? So what if you lose the Sir Rosh Chodesh? Can you offer it for the Regalim? And he says, yeah, sure, no problem. But why is it, yeah, sure, no problem? I understand, according to Reb Meir, for example, who says that they're all interchangeable. You could bring all three of the korbanos are machaper for all three things. Okay, I understand why they're interchangeable. According to Reb Shimon, who says that each korban serves to be mechaper, to be mechaper for different things. So that why are they interchangeable? So again, Eisvei. So we ask a kasha on Rabbah, who says Lev Bezdin Masne. We ask a kasha on Rabbah from our Mishnah. Amar Reb Shimon. They said to Reb Shimon, Ma'oshe Yikar v'Zabaza. Can these different korbanos be interchangeable? If you lose one, can you bring it as for the other purpose? So when you find it. So Amar Lahu. So Reb Shimon says, yeah, sure, no problem. Yikarvu, yeah, no problem. They're interchangeable. Amar Lahu, but they said to him, we don't understand. Hoyil ve'en kaparason shove heyach ein krivin zabaza. Since each korban serves a different purpose and is mechaper for a unique thing, how are they interchangeable? Amar Loin. So Reb Shimon responds, and we say that this isn't an ideal answer, but he responds and he says, look, kulan boyin lechaper atumas mikdash v'kodashav. Look, you're right. Each one is for its own thing, but the common denominator, though, is that they're coming for tumas mikdash v'kodashav, right? For something related to, Tuma in the Beis HaMikdash. So, even though, they're different, one is for Ein Ba'idiyah Batchila V'yesh Ba'idiyah Basof, one's for Ein Ba'idiyah Lo Batchila Basof, one is Tar Shel Samit, but okay, whatever, they're interchangeable because they're all basically Tuma in the Beis HaMikdash, right? But V'amai, why did Reb Shimon have to answer like that, which is, I guess, arguably not an ideal answer? Lema, Leiv Bezdin Masne Alein. Why doesn't he just simply say, Leiv Bezdin Masne? You know why they're interchangeable? Because Milichatchila, when Bezdin set them aside with the intention that, yeah, sure, it's a Sir Rosh Chodesh, but if it gets lost, and now we brought a different animal for the Sir Rosh Chodesh, and now what are we going to do with this one? So Milchatchila, they have in mind, well, we'll bring it for Sir Regalim or something like that. Tosfos asked the kasha, didn't we say yesterday that this is an uncommon thing and they don't have it in mind? So, okay. Whatever, the Tosfos gives an answer there. But anyways, Akoponim, so if Rabbah's right that Leiv Bezdin Masne, so why didn't Reb Shimon just say, oh yeah, why are they interchangeable? Lev Bezdin Masne. They're interchangeable because, even though they're unique, but Milchatchila, Bezdin had in mind that if it gets lost, it can be offered for a different one. If the Sir Rosh Chodesh gets lost, it can be offered as Sir Regalim. Milichatchila, that's what Bezdin has in mind. So if Rab is correct that there's this concept of Lev Bezdin Masna, why didn't Reb Shimon simply respond with Lev Bezdin Masna? That's why they're interchangeable. So, and for the Gemara, Reb Shimon Ka'amait, you're asking Akasha from Reb Shimon. Why didn't Reb Shimon respond with Lev Bezdin Masna? Reb Shimon doesn't hold of Lev Bezdin Masna. The Rabbanan hold of Lev Bezdin Masna. Reb Shimon doesn't. Reb Shimon Leis Lev Bezdin Masna. He didn't respond with Lev Bezdin Masna because he doesn't hold of the concept of Lev Bezdin Masna Lein. The Amar of Idi Bar Oven, Amar of Amram, Amar of Yochanan. So Zvidi Bar Abim, wow, excuse me. Sorry, 1 second. Oh, gosh. All right. Oh, man. Sorry. Mom, sorry, everybody. Okay. Amar of Idi Bar Oven, Amar of Amram, Amar of Yochanan. Tmidin Shaloi Hutzruchu L'Tzibor. Okay, these Korban Tomids that comes Nisan time, and they're now old news, right? They were purchased with the old shekels. So says Reb Yochanan that the Divrei Reb Shimon, that Reb Shimon would say, Ein niftin tmimim. They are not pota'able. They are not pota'able. The Divrei Chacham niftin tmimim. Says Reb Yochanan that the Chacham's opinion, however, would be niftin tmimim, that they can be poted, which is what we said yesterday, right? You poted them, and then you basically rebuy them with the new shekels. So that's the opinion of the Chachamim, and we said why? Because Lev Bezdin Masna, right? What about right? Kedusha al Neichan Halcha. Where did their kedusha go? Lev Bezdin Masna. That if they're not needed, then they become kedushas damim, not kedushas aguf. Reb Shimon doesn't hold of this concept, and therefore he doesn't hold of Lev Bezdin Masna. Therefore he says you cannot be pot of them. Ein niftin tmimim. They cannot be poted when they are healthy. So we see that Reb Shimon does not hold of the concept of Lev Bezdin Masna. I'm gonna chap a shtickle more coffee. Okay. I wonder if there's going to be a long daf. It doesn't feel like it should be such a long daf. I don't think it's super complicated, but it's already been 13 minutes and we're still on Yud Aleph. We're not even on Yud Beis yet. Taka, it did take me a while to learn it. I learned this on Shabbos. I was learning all day. Just Gemara. Not just Gemara, but yeah, basically I was learning Gemara till the end of Shabbos, basically. So it did take a while. So I wonder if it's going to be a long daf. Anywho, who are these rabbis? Right? Reb Yochanan is saying that the rabbis would say that these Tamidin that were purchased with shekels from the previous year can be poted. Who are these rabbis? Right? We saw yesterday that Reb Yochanan had said that what do you do with these Tamidin? So you could just be poted them. Again, Reb Yochanan is saying that according to the rabbis, you could be poted them. Who are these rabbis? Give me a brisa, give me a mishnah. Right? Reb Yochanan's coming, he's saying the rabbis say that you could be poted them. Which rabbis? From where? Where do you see this opinion? So, who is it? Okay, well we saw I think it was yesterday, right? Yeah, why not? Right, we saw a Mishnah yesterday. What do you do with the leftover Ketoris at the end of the year? You could be poted. Okay, so if you could be poted, let's say, okay, so it could be poted because Lev Bezdin Masna, that whatever's left over, you could be poted. So let's say it's those same rabbis who say by Ketoris also say that by these animals, you could be poted them as well. But Shiny Ketoris to Lav by Re'iyahi, maybe not. Maybe those rabbis would say that by Ketores you could be podet because Lev Bezdin Masne. Because what else are you going to do with it? You're basically stuck with it. Although you have this Ketores, it's left over. You're not going to use that anymore. It's purchased with the money from the previous year. So what do? So you could be podet. However, maybe though, when it comes to these animals, the rabbis would not say that you could be poted them when they're healthy, because you can also just let them graze develop a mum, and at that point be poda them, right? And then buy new ones with new money. Or whatever, I guess maybe you already have new ones, but at that point you can be poda them, kilu. So when it comes to, so maybe the rabbis who said that by ketores you could be poda it, because what else? There's no other alternative. But when it comes to the healthy sheep, just let them graze until they develop a mum, and at that point be podet. I don't know that the Chacham would say that you can milichatchila be podet them when they're healthy. Maybe it's the rabbis by the para aduma, right? That they said that by the para aduma, if you find a nicer one, so you can use that one instead, and the initial one you can be podet, because lev bezdin masne, that if this happens, it'll be kedushas damim. But Dilmashani para dama yukarin. But as we said yesterday, para duma is unique in that it's very expensive. I might not say this by sort of Tom, Dick, and Harry sheep. So ve'elarabonon de amrulo. Now this is an interesting one. So as we kind of started off today's daf, so we pointed out that according to Reb Shimon, so he says that Sarah Naise Bachutz is ein b'idea batchila v'yesh b'idea basof. Seir regalim is ein b'idea lo batchila v'lo basof. Seir rosh chadashim tar shachal satome. So amrulo, they said to him, are they interchangeable? So now you have to read into that. In order to understand this, there's an assumption being made here. And as we're going to see in the Gemara in a minute, but I have to kind of explain the assumption over here in order for the next lines of the Gemara to make sense. First, I'm going to drink coffee. The Gemara is assuming right now that when we say the Rabbanan of Amrulo, that the rabbis are saying to Reb Shimon, are they interchangeable? And we want to assume right now that who are these rabbis? Who's the Rabbanan? Reb Yehuda. What was Reb Yehuda's opinion in the Mishnah? Reb Yehuda had said that Sarah Naise Bachutz is for Ein B'Yediyah Batchila V'Yesh B'Yediyah Basof. Meaning, Be'etzim, Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon agree by Sarah Naise Bachutz that it's for Ein B'Yediyah Batchila V'Yesh B'Yediyah Basof. Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon also agree that by Sir Regalim it's for Ein B'Yediyah Lo Batchila V'Lo Basof. Where they disagree is just regarding Sirei Chadashim. Rabbi Yehuda says that's also for Ein B'Yediyah Lo Batchila V'Lo Basof, whereas Rabbi Shimon says it's for Tar Shachal Satame. But Rabbi Yehuda agrees with Rabbi Shimon. He's on the same page of Rabbi Shimon in that he's not like Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir said that they're all just interchangeable. You could bring any of the korbanos for any of the things, they're all interchangeable. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't say that they're all interchangeable. Right? So Naise B'Chutz is specifically for Ein B'Yediyah Batchila V'Yesh B'Yediyah Basof. Sir Regalim are specifically for Ein B'Yediyah Lo Batchila V'Lo Basof, and also Sir Rosh Chodashim Kilu Ein B'Yediyah Lo Batchila V'Lo Basof. It's not for Ein B'Yediyah Batchila V'Yesh B'Yediyah Basof. So according to Rabbi Yehuda also, right, they're not entirely interchangeable. So we want to assume right now that Rabbi Yehuda is the one who's asking a question on Reb Shimon. He's saying, hey, Reb Shimon, would you say that the korbanos are interchangeable? And you have to read into the question deeper. What's Rabbi Yehuda really asking Reb Shimon? What he's saying is, Reb Shimon, I, Rabbi Yehuda, hold leiv bezdin masna aleim. I, Rabbi Yehuda, hold that milchatchila bezdin, when they set aside these korbanos, they say, and if they get lost, so then I'll be able to bring it as a different one. If my Sirei Regalim gets lost, I could, or my Sirei Yom Kippur gets a Sarah Naise B'Chutz gets lost, I could bring it as a Sirei Regalim, on Sukkot or whatever. So Rabbi Yehuda says, look, I hold of Lev Bezdin Masne, and therefore for me it's no problem. Yeah, sure, all these korbanos are interchangeable, but you, Reb Shimon, don't hold of Lev Bezdin Masne. So therefore, would you say that, how could you say that the korbanos are interchangeable? Wow, that was all kind of an introduction to the next few lines. So Kilu, First we said, well, maybe who are the rabbis who argue with Reb Shimon and say Lev Bezdin Masne? So we want to say, well, maybe it's the rabbis of the Ketores. We said no, but the Ketores is maybe it's different. Maybe they wouldn't say that by the animals since you could let them graze. Maybe it's the rabbis of the Para Aduma. No, Para Aduma is too expensive. We say, okay, maybe it's the rabbis of Amrulo to Reb Shimon, and who is that rabbis? It's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, and what Rabbi Yehuda is saying, well, I say Lev Bezdin Masna Aleim, but what about you, Reb Shimon, who don't say Lev Bezdin Masna Aleim? How could you say that they're interchangeable? So, that's the question. So when we say that it's the rabbis of Amrulo, we're saying that that's a reference to Rabbi Yehuda, and what he's saying is, I, Rabbi Yehuda, hold Lev Bezdin Masna Aleim, and therefore, so there you see, it must be that Rabbi Yehuda, therefore, is the rabbis who's questioning Rabbi Shimon, and what he's saying is that he says Lev Bezdin Masna Aleim, and therefore, the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Shimon is really Rabbi Yehuda. And that's Be'etzim, it's those Rabbanon of Amrulo. Okay. So, third line of Yud Beis Amud Aleph, Ve'elu Rabbanon do Amrulo. So maybe it's the rabbis who said to Reb Shimon, how could you say that these korbanos are interchangeable? But Frekti Gemara, Mimai de Rabbi Yehuda. Why are we assuming everything that I just said? Why are we assuming that the rabbis of Amrulo are Rabbi Yehuda, V'hachi ka'amar le, and that what Rabbi Yehuda is saying to Reb Shimon is as I explained, right? Bishlam aledidi, that Rabbi Yehuda is saying to Reb Shimon, okay, according to me, that I say Lev Bezdin Masna Lein, so I'm to Lahachi Karvu, that's why, if it gets lost, so you could bring it as a different one, okay? But according to you, Reb Shimon, who don't say Lev Bezdin Masna, Amai Karvu, well then why are they interchangeable? So, in order to say that the rabbis of Amrulo argue with Reb Shimon with regard to Lev Bezdin Masna Alein, you would have to say that it's Rabbi Yehuda who is questioning Reb Shimon, but Dilma, maybe it's not Rabbi Yehuda who's questioning Reb Shimon, and maybe Reb Meir is the one who's questioning Reb Shimon, and what Reb Meir is challenging Reb Shimon and asking Reb Shimon is, I understand according to me, Reb Meir, I say that all of the goats are interchangeable. You could, any of the goats could be ordered, you could be mechaper for any of the things. Okay, so I understand why if one gets lost and then found, you could use it for one of the others. If the Sir of Yom Kippur gets lost, but then it's found, it could be offered for Sir Galim. Fine, I get it, because I said they're all interchangeable. Mishumachi Yikarvu, but El Didach, according to you, Reb Shimon, Amai Yikarvu, why can they be interchangeable since they're, according to you, Reb Shimon, they're each unique? So, in order to say that it's the rabbis of Amrulo, you would have to assume that the questioner is Rabbi Yehuda, but who says that the questioner is Rabbi Yehuda, and that it's about a Lev Bezdin Masna Alein? No, maybe it's about Reb Shimon, maybe it's maybe the questioner is Reb Meir, and it's just Pashut saying, and nothing to do with Lev Bezdin Masna Alein, it's just saying, I, Reb Meir, say all the korbanos are interchangeable, therefore they're interchangeable. Therefore, if you lose one, you find it, you can switch it. But according to you, Reb Shimon, why are they interchangeable? Nothing about Lev de Bezdin Masna Alein. So what's pshat? So we're struggling to figure out. Reb Yochanan had said that according to Reb Shimon, that when it comes to these timidin, these leftover korbanos from the previous year, Reb Shimon says you cannot be podet. The rabbi says you can be podet. Reb Yochanan says it. He doesn't bring a brisa to support it, and we're trying to figure out where do we have a brisa or a mishnah from where we can learn who these rabbis are that say Lev Bezdin Masna Alein, and we so far haven't found what we're looking for. El Reb Yochanan Gemare Gomer La. You know what? Reb Yochanan had a tradition from his Rebbe. The divrei Reb Shimon ein niftin, the divrei Chachamim niftin. That, according to Reb Shimon, these korbanos, these sheep, these tamids, cannot be poded, and according to the Rabbanon, they can be poded. He had a tradition. He didn't necessarily have a brisa for it, but that was the tradition that he received from his Rebbe. Well, Reb Sherman delays lay lev bezdin masna lein my avdindu. Now, according to Reb Shimon, who says that we don't say lev bezdin masna lein, and therefore you cannot be poded these animals, what do you do with them? You had set them aside to be korban tamids. They're in the lishkas atloim. They're healthy. They can't be offered as korbanos because it's now a new year. We want to use korbanos purchased with the new shekels. So what do you do with them? So Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Yechanan mekitzin boenes hamizbeach for the kayetz hamizbeach. That basically, whenever there was no korban being offered on the mizbeach, we don't want the mizbeach to just be sitting there unused. We want to be these korban kayetz hamizbeach. It's the dessert of the mizbeach. It's these korban olas you offer. So if there's nothing that needs to go onto the mizbeach right now, so we'll put a korban ola on there. We'll just have a korban for the Rebbeinu Shalom. So these sheep that were set aside for korban tamids. So, and as we're going to see in a minute, that they are korban olas, right? Olas tamid, right? They're korban olas. We're going to see that we're going to talk about what happens if we're talking about chatasis. But anyways, these sheep were designated to be korban olas. We don't actually use them. We also can't be pot of them according to Reb Shimon. So what do we do with them? We say, you know what? Well, let's use them for the korban ola of the kayetz hamizbeach. That if there's nothing else being offered on the mizbeach, we'll offer these sheep for that purpose. Amr of Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchok. Says Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchok. Umode Reb Shimon, that Reb Shimon admits besirei chatos she'ein makitzin begufan ela b'dmein. Excuse me, I'm gonna rub my nose again. I'm growing out my beard again. I'm not sure if that affects general itchiness. Anyways, so where are we? So Amr of Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Umoder Reb Shimon b'sirei chatos. What if you have so like let's say you had, I think what it means, like let's say they had purchased sheep, goats, to be, let's say, a Seir Rosh Chodesh. Okay? Let's say it was going to be a Seir Rosh Chodesh. Okay, let's say Rosh Chodesh Adar, they had set aside, right, they had purchased goats that they were going to be the Seir Lachatos for Rosh Chodesh, right, Lachatos LaHashem, as we learned the other day. And they were purchased with the with the shekels, but then it got lost, and now it's already Nisan, and we want to use the new shekels. So, right, we want to use goats purchased with the new shekels. So what do you do with these goats that you had initially set aside for the Rosh Chodesh? Excuse me, that got lost, and they were purchased with the previous shekels, and now it's the new year. So what do you do with those, right? So the thing is, so Reb Shimon would say that, well, you can't be pot of them, so use it for the kayetz hamizbeach. The thing is, the kayetz hamizbeach is an ola; these are chatases. So what do you do? So Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, essentially, we're getting into real like kodshim kind of stuff over here. I mean, again, right, the first two prakim of Shevuos are like kind of kodshimi, but right, we're getting up to Zvachim pretty soon. I wonder, is this what Zvachim is going to be like? Is it going to be like working through different korbanos and scenarios? Might be. So Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Umoder Reb Shimon b'sirei chatos, that Reb Shimon who says that these korban tomids can just be used for kayetz hamizbeachs, he does say though that by a korban chatos she'ein mekitzin begufan, you wouldn't be able to just offer them themselves as korban kayetz hamizbeachs because they are chatoses and the kayetz hamizbeach is an ola. What you would do is you would I reckon you'd have to wait for them to get a mum. Once they get a mum, you could be pota it, and then with that money you can purchase a ola to be used for the kayetz hamizbeach. Hachu to make kara ola v'hashta ola. Because when it comes to the korban tamids, where Reb Shimon says you could just use it for the kayetz hamizbeach, that's because korban tamid is an ola and the kayetz hamizbeach is ochit and ola. Aval hasam, but if we're talking about seirei chatos, is to make kara chatos v'hashta ola, that initially was a chatos, and now you want to offer it as a kayetz hamizbeach, which is an ola. Gezer la'achar kapara atu lifnei kapara. We say that you can't do that. Now there's an important thing that I need to share quickly, which is mida oraisa. Technically, a chatas can be offered as an ola, meaning in this scenario where this right? If we have, let's say, a goat was designated to be a Sa'ir Chatos on Rosh Chodesh, and then it got lost, okay, and then they offered a different goat instead, and then they find it, but now it's Nisan already, and it's the new year, so we can't offer it on another Rosh Chodesh. So we say Kayetz HaMizbeach. Technically speaking, if they had already set aside a replacement goat and slaughtered that goat instead for the Seir Rosh Chodesh of Adar, so this goat was set aside for a Seir Rosh Chodesh. A different one, right? It got lost, so they designated a different one and sacrificed that one. So technically, once already the Seir Rosh Chodesh was already offered with a different animal, well, this animal that was designated as a chatas technically can be used for the Kayetz HaMizbeach as an ola, since the korban that it was designated for was already korbaned. It was already with a replacement. So technically it can be offered as an ola. But the thing is, if they would find it before the korban it was designated for was offered with a replacement, well, then you would be unable to offer it as an ola. You would have to offer it as a chatas. So because it's only after the kapara has already been kaparad with a replacement that you'd be able to offer this animal that was initially designated as a chatas as an ola, but before a replacement has been sacrificed, you would have to offer this animal as that sacrifice. So in that case, you'd be unable to offer it as an ola. So because basically in some scenarios you can offer a chatas as an ola, in other scenarios you cannot, so therefore we say you can never offer a chatas as an ola, right? So again, so the Gemara says, Hacha, I'm going to go back like 2-3 lines, read this again. Hacha hu demei ikar ola v'hashta ola by the korban tomids. Initially it was an ola, and it's being offered as a kayetz mizbech, which is also an ola. Aval hasam, but by the korban chatos, demei ikar chatos, where it was initially set aside as a chatos, v'hashta ola, but now you want to offer it as a korban kayetz mizbech, which is an ola. Gezer la'achar kapara atu lifnei kapara. We say even though the kapara has already been kapared, even though a replacement has already been offered, which means that technically this chatas can now be offered as an ola, but still we say don't offer it as an ola out of concern for when the kapara has not yet been kapared with a replacement, where you would be unable to offer the chatas as an ola. So therefore we say never offer the chatas as an ola. Abaye says Abaye Afananami Tanino. Now we're going to bring a bunch of supports for this from Mishnahs and Brises and stuff. We also learn this from a Mishnah, Par Visoyer Shel Yom HaKippurim. We saw this yesterday. If you have the cow or goat of Yom Kippur, the sar, right, the sar Anaisa Bifnim, the paris Anaisa Bifnim of Yom Kippur, Sha'avdu, that they got lost, Ve'fish, right, and those are chatases, right, Ve'fish Acherim Tachtein, and they had designated others and ordered others in their stead. V'chein Seirei Avodazar Sha'avdu, also if you have a goat for a korban Avodazara that also got lost, Ve'fish Acherim Tachtein, and a replacement was designated. Kulan Yamusu Div Rebuta. Rebuta says, well, they all have to die because they've already been replaced. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon Omer, whereas Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon say, Yiru ad sheyistoavu. What you do is you let them graze until they get a mum, v'yimachu v'yiplu dmeyen l'nedava, at which point you can sell them, and that money will be for kayetz hamizbeach she'en chatas tibur mesa, because unlike Rabbi Yehuda who says just let them die, they say that would only be by chatas yachid, but not by chatas tzibur. Therefore, we let them graze until they get a mum. But ve'amai, why do we need to let them graze? Nikarvu inu gufayu ola. Why do we need to wait for them to get a mum? At which point you'll sell them and use the proceeds to buy a korban kayetz hamizbeach. Why not just offer them themselves as a kayetz hamizbeach, as this ola kayetz hamizbeach? Elalav shmamino gzer la'achar kapara atu lifnei kapara. Rather, it must be because even though there had already been replacements for these korban chatases, still we would not offer them as an ola, out of concern for when they haven't yet have found offered replacements. On my Rave also says that we have a Mishnah. What's this talking about? This is talking about on Yom Kippur as well. There will be two goats, right? One is Sa'ir La Hashem, the other is Sa'ir La Azazel. Okay? There would be two goats, and they would draw lots, and one would say as the korban, right, the chatas apnimi, and the other one would be chucked off a cliff. That was the Sa'ir La Azazel. What happens if the Sa'ir Azazel then just dies before we have the chance to push it off the cliff? So now what do? The Sa'ir La Azazel is dead. You have the other Sa'ir is still alive, but you don't have so you have the Sa'ir La Hashem, but you don't have a Sa'ir La Azazel anymore. So you take two new goats and you draw lots another time. And one of the two new goats will be La Azazel, the other one will be La Hashem. The one La Azazel you chuck off the cliff, but now you have two goats that are La Hashem, right? The one that's still alive from the first pair, and the one that's still alive from the second pair, right? The two Sa'ir La Hashems. So we say, right, so one of them you'll offer as the Sa'ir Hanaise Bifnim, V'asheni, and the second one, Yira Achi, Yistoiv, let it graze until it gets a mum, V'yimacher, at which point sell it, V'yiplu Damav Linadava, and the money will go towards the Korbanos Kaitz HaMizbeach, those Ola offerings. V'amai, but why do you have to wait for it to get a mum? Yikar v'yu gufe, Ola. Just offer this extra korban chatas, just offer it itself as the ola kayetz hamizbeach elalav shmamina gzeira acha kapara tu lifnei kapara. Rather, it's that we don't offer this chatas as an ola out of this gezerah. That even though technically you can, since the replacement was already offered, but still we say even once the replacement has been offered, still we won't offer a chatas as an ola. Amar Ravina says, Ravina afananami taninu. We also have another mishnah that proves this. Oshom shemesu ba'alev. So Ocean is kapu ba'alev. Now, there is a concept that I think it's probably come up maybe Masechta Pesachim, maybe Masechta Yoma. I'm sure it's going to come up in when we get to Kachim. But there's a concept of chatos, chomish chatos mesos. There are 5 scenarios of a korban chatos where you just let it die. One of those scenarios is chatos shemesu ba'alel. If the owner of the chatos died, so he's not going to be offering it anymore, he's dead. Or if the owner already got a kapara from a different animal, so he doesn't need this animal anymore. So in those 2 scenarios, those are 2 out of the 5 scenarios. In those 2 scenarios, so then you just let the animal that was set aside for the chatas, you just let the animal die. The question is, what if it's not a chatas? What if it's an asham? Do we treat an asham, a guilt offering, the same as we treat a chatas, a sin offering? In which case it would also die, or is an asham different? So we learn in the Mishnah, asham shemesu ba'alov. If you have a korban asham that its owner died, oshin is kapru ba'alov, or the owner already got atonement, so he doesn't need this animal anymore as a korban asham. So yira achi istoi v'yimacher v'yiplu damav v'nadava. So the Tanakama says, just let it graze until it gets a mum. Once it gets a mum, sell it, and that money will go for korban kayetz hamizbeachs. Rabbi Eliezer says, Rabbi Eliezer, yamus, we treat the asham like a chatas, and therefore it dies. Rabbi Shua seems to be saying very similar to the Tanakama. Rashi points out that in Zvachim they asked the kasha. But anyways, Omer Yavi b'dam of Ola, similar to Tanakama, he says, with its money, that let it get a mum, and its money will go towards kayetz hamizbech. For the kar hagufa, but according to those who say that let it get a mum, and the money will go for the kayetz hamizbech, why don't you just have the asham itself be offered as an ola for the kayetz hamizbech? The kar hagufa ola. So lav gzer lacher kapara to lifnei kapara shmamino. So again, we see that we make this gezerah and we don't allow the asham to be offered as an ola. Tanya nami hachi. What is this again? I'm reading Rashi. Mosos Reb Shimon mekitzin boinas hamizbech. Okay, so Reb Shimon, of course, I had said earlier that these korban tamids from the shekels of the previous year, previous year. So these korban tamids, you simply offer them as korban kayetz hamizbeachs. We have a brisa like that. Tanya Nam Yochim, and in a brisa like this, ma hein mevin min hamosarus. What would you do with the leftover korban tamids from the previous year? Kayetz kivnos. Wait, did I skip them? Okay. Kayetz kivnos shuach lamizbeach. They become the dessert like dates on the mizbeach. What do you mean? How can you be putting dates on the mizbeach? It says you're not allowed to put honey on the mizbeach, and that includes fruits that have honey. So Tani Rav Chanina kivnos shuach le'odom. No, it doesn't mean that you would actually put dates on the mizbeach. It means that these animals would be offered as a dessert offering on the mizbeach, not dates. The animals would be offered, but the animals being offered are dessert, just like people enjoy dates as a dessert. Well, the Rabbanu Shalom enjoys korbanos as his dessert. More coffee. Darash Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizde. Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizde darshint ein mekitzim ba'ola sa'of. Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizde darshint that the kayetz hamizbeach, the ola kayetz hamizbeach, is not a bird. Not a bird. You don't offer birds for that korban. Amar Rava haborcha. Rava says this is nonsense. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak l'Rava. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says to Rava, my borcha. What are you calling nonsense? Onar misanile. I'm the one who told Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda this. Which made the Rav Shimi minado misanile, and I said it quoting Rav Shimi minado. Dam Rav Shimi minado. Mosris linidvas tzibor azle. That these extra sheep go for nidvas tzibor. Ve'ein olas of bitzibor, and there is no concept of an olas ha'of for communal offerings, and therefore you can't offer birds for the olas kayetz hamizbech. Ve'av Shmuel saver laha de Reb Yochanan. What was this? The Amar Le'el. I'm just reading Rashi quickly. The Amar Le'el Tamidin Shelo Hutzuchu L'Reb Shimon Deleis Lev Bezemasna Mekitzim B'Enas HaMizbech V'Gufim V'Tzvichin Re'iyah. Okay, so Shmuel also holds of this concept of what Reb Yochanan said, which is that according to Reb Shimon, with the leftover Tamidin, you'd offer them directly as Kayetz HaMizbech offerings. The Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel Korbanos Tzibor Sakin Moshchason L'Mashahen. Okay, that when you slaughter these korban tziburs, so they get slaughtered for whatever they are meant to be. So, if it's going to be slaughtered as a korban tamid, great. If it's so if it's ola, an ola for korban tamid, great. If it's for if it's now Nisan and you can't offer them anymore because they need to be offered from the new shekels, so it'll be for a kayetz hamizbeach. I mean, it's the sakin, right? The knife that's slaughtering it basically determines whether it's going to be an ola for a korban tamid or whether it's going to be an ola for a kayetz hamizbeach. But it's the same animal itself. Tanya Nam Yochim, we also in a brisa like this, Mod Reb Shimon, that Reb Shimon admits b'sa'ir with a sa'ir she'im lo kariv beregel. If a receiver or golem wasn't offered beregel, he kariv b'rosh chodesh. V'im lo kariv b'rosh chodesh, Yikariv b'yom HaKippurim. V'im lo kariv b'yom HaKippurim, Yikariv b'regel. V'im lo kariv b'regel, zeh Yikariv b'regel acher shemitchilasu lo ba el l'chaper al hamizbeach hachitzon. That says Reb Shimon that these different animals are interchangeable, right? If this korban wasn't offered for for the Siri Regalim, so it could be offered for Yom Kippur, etc. So because they all came to be mechaper on the mizbeach hachitzon. And so long as that is the case, they are interchangeable. And here also, you have these korban olas, and even if you're not going to use them as a korban tamid, you can use it as an ola kayetz ha-mizbeach. Okay, and drink a little coffee, and then we're just going to go a little bit further. Val zodin tumas mikdash v'kodash v'saranaisa b'fnim v'chulei. So unintentionally, going into the Beis Hamikdash or eating kodshim in a state of tumah, the Sarah Anaisa Bifnim will be mechaper. What is the word I'm thinking of? Let me just check the art scroll quickly. Oh no, is this? Come on. Yeah, what's the word I'm thinking of? Rebel. Okay. Thinking of the word rebel. Okay. Minan immediately, how do we know this? The Tana Rabbanan that the rabbis taught in a brayso v'chiper al akodesh. Okay, that regarding the chatas and Isa Bifnim, the Sarah and Isa Bifnim, it will atone on the Kodesh, mitumas b'nei Yisrael, the Gomer from the tumas of the b'nei Yisrael, and it says, and what does the pasuk say? It says, umi pish'eim l'chol chatosam, pishaim and chatos. So pishaim elu amirodim, pishaim are rebellions. V'cheinu omer, and similarly it says, melech Moab poshabi, king of Moab, rebelled against me. Omer as Tifsha Livna Beisahi, that Livna rebelled at that time. So Miradim, so Pshaim are Miradim, rebellion. So I guess even if you do it intentionally, the Sarah Nasa B'fnim will be Mechaper. Chatos Elu Ashkagos V'cheinu Omer Nefesh Ki Secheta B'Shkaga. Chatos are Shkagas, accidentals, as it says Nefesh Ki Secheta B'Shkaga. When so it says when a person Techetaz Achet Chatos is bishkaga unintentionally. So so the Sarah Nasa B'fnim is mechaper both for intentional as well as it's tole for yesh b'idiyah batchila ve'ein b'idiyah b'sof. That was daf Yud Beis of Masechta Shevuos. We're going to stop here. We explored to a large extent the opinion of Reb Shimon, who does not hold of Lev Bezdin Masne, and instead he says that with these Korban Tomids, you would offer them as Ola Kayetz HaMizbeach offerings, and we got into a bunch of details around that. Tomorrow is going to be an interesting daf, in my opinion. I think I would like to try and complete the parak tomorrow. Let's see. But anyways, have a great one. Peace out.